we recommend that you move to adopt this 2018 Open Meetings Resolution. Are there any questions?
I don't think so. Seems to be pretty much the same as what we've done for the last few years.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. It's identical.
This is an action item. Can I get a can I get a motion on this item, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the proposed 2018 Open Meetings Resolution as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 9, future meeting schedule and locations. Jump in here.
On the May 17th meeting, that's when I go to the Cleveland Clinic. So I've seen, Mr. Chairman, if we can move the May 17th to May 3rd, if that didn't conflict with another commissioner. And in that, me and Ralph were looking at Albuquerque and Gallup. If we can move Gallup to August 23rd and Albuquerque to October 4th, and the reason for that is that's right before usually the first Elk Hunt, whatever, and it's a central location so that if we come to a meeting, everybody can get back to either go elk hunt or help somebody elk hunt.
So, Mr. Chairman, absolutely on the location switch, that's not a problem. We can work through that. Regarding the date on May 3rd, I guess I need to defer to the Deputy Director because we have a number of opening of big game rules, and we are following the 30-day time frame for posting. And
What
so,
about May 10th?
I see Stuart squirming in his chair over there.
May need to push it forward instead of backwards.
Mr. Chair, yeah. So with the new House bill that passed in the resolution, or not the resolution, but the bill that passed last legislative session, well, really, we built the schedule so we could approve rules and get them posted on the Sunshine portal, et cetera. So moving it later would be easier. Moving it forward would preclude us
What about
from
May
posting.
24th, even though it's the Thursday before Memorial? The next week would be fine.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Salopek, I think what we need to look at is, do we meet this 30-day time frame posting to meet the June 21st adoption of, is the proposal, I guess, Deputy Director Jaramillo, that we are going to actually approve a rule on June, request approval of a rule on June 21st? There's two.
So, Mr. Chairman, Director, for the June 21st, yes, we're going to have for adoption 2 final rules. We would just have to notice the rule would have to be a lot earlier. Typically, right now, that rule would have to be almost finalized April 26th with the current dates that we got. If we decide to move the date to a later date in May, we would just have to follow that 30. We would have to require that those 30 days. So as long as we move it later, I think we'd be fine, because we're not going to talk about on the June one. That one is actually going to be posted probably in well, let me see right here, in April. It should be fine.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Salopek, looks like if we can move it later, would be better for us to be able to work within the requirements of.
I defer both to the calendar of the department and Commissioner Salopek, so it doesn't make any difference.
Do we have to have it on Thursday? Could we do it on Tuesday?
Back it off.
22nd?
22nd.
Mr. Chairman, as long as we're not earlier than that date, I think later would work. So a Tuesday would work.
So if I'm hearing that correctly, then it would be, are you looking for May 15th, or are you looking for May 22nd?
22nd, 23rd, 24th, somewhere
I
in there.
think we could do May 22nd.
Unless you want to do it Thursday the 24th, but it's right before Memorial Weekend.
Mr. Chairman, I think May 22nd might work a little bit better in terms of scheduling.
Being it's a holiday. That'd be fine with me, May 22nd. It worked better for me.
Does that work for the rest of the group?
Fine. Last week of school.
Is that okay for you, Ralph? I know you said you couldn't do the 24th.
That'll be fine.
Okay.
22nd.
That gives
then.
30 days between the May and the June meeting, exactly 30 days. That's a requirement.
That's sufficient.
There.
Mr. Chairman, that we would be right, Commissioner, it would be right on 30 days. So I'm assuming that that's correct and okay.
Yes, that sounds good to me.
Okay. And then flip-flopping the Albuquerque and Gallup, not a problem for anybody? Anybody else have any other conflicts that they know of? Okay. So I will entertain, I think this is an action item, I'll entertain a motion to approve the schedule as amended. May 22nd, 2018 will be the Los Alamos meeting, and then Albuquerque and Gallup, we will flip-flop the locations. I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
All in favor, or second? All in favor?
Aye.
Let's have it. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sandra, October 4th, balloons,
Posting of the rule for
Albuquerque. So probably
Rules Act.
get started sooner rather than later, finding a place to stay. Sorry about that. No, I can accommodate a modest number of people. In fact, the same amount of people that are here today, I could probably fit them all in there. But beyond that, no.
So, Mr. Chairman, on that note, perhaps the Albuquerque office will be open and ready for business by that time, so it might be that opportunity.
Well-
And they're shaking their head no, and they're freaking out that I've just said that, but we will certainly try to make that happen.
I don't mind parking in dirt. So
Okay.
We can rent heaters.
if it's close to open, let's do it. I think
Grand
that'd be
opening in August, I thought.
that'd be great.
Okay. We will certainly strive for that, Mr. Chairman.
All
Commissioner.
right. So now there's a line in the sand. That's good.
Ouch.
That's good news. Okay. Agenda item number 10: State Game Commission Award. Commission to designate a commissioner to review and select the 2018 recipient. Mr.
Hey,
Chadwick.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, as you may recall, every year we have a banquet, the governor's banquet, where we have an auction and
What is the date of that banquet this year? Do you know?
This year's banquet will be February 17th. That's a Saturday.
February
And it'll be at the New Mexico Expo Creative Arts Building.
Have we lined out a speaker for that yet? Guy last year was great.
Yeah, we've got our contractor that's handling that is in charge of that, but we're in the planning stages. They're very well along with the planning, and it's going to be a wonderful event. I mean, it really is. I think everybody has a good time.
People here haven't gone. I'd recommend going. I know it's no fun spending your Saturday with people you already work with, but it's a pretty cool event. So I'd recommend taking the time to go one of these years. Anyway, I interrupted you.
Mr. Chairman, anytime you want, that's fine. So the banquet, again, will be held on Saturday, February 17th in Albuquerque. It will be a fun event. Last year we had up to close to 500 people attend, and I think by all accounts it was a great time. Each year I think it continues to get more refined, and it is an opportunity for people to get together, for the department to really showcase what we do, and to thank the public for the support that we get. This year, again, we will be presenting, in addition to the event itself, we will be presenting 3 different awards in recognition for those folks that who have, over the years, shown a great deal of effort and support for the department. We have 3 different awards. The first one is the Governor's Conservation Lifetime Achievement Award. This is really recognition of somebody who has spent an entire career or significant portion of their life in support of conservation in New Mexico. The second one, which is the primary reason I'm coming before you today, is the Commissioner's Wildlife Conservation Partnership Award, which recognizes primarily organizations that through their efforts have worked closely with the department in support of our efforts in support of wildlife here in New Mexico. And then the third one, it's the honor of the director herself to provide an award for, a conservation professional of the year. And that would be one that she would accept and make that determination on. So as far as these awards, the process to submit is through a letter of nomination, no more than 1,500 words. We ask that individuals submit a biography or a resume outlining either what the individual does or the organization in support of their nomination. We have a dedicated email address, which is up on the screen. Questions can be asked. We can respond to that. And we certainly encourage members of the public to participate in this. And if they know somebody or an organization they want to nominate, we encourage them to do so. The deadline to make this nomination is February 5th. So today, what we're looking to do, like years in the past, I'm coming before the commission to ask by way of vote that you select one member of the commission to review those nominations, and on behalf of the commission, make a selection for the Commissioners Partnership Award. And so this is an ask that will require the commission to nominate that person here today. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
I've got any questions? I think you did this last year, right?
Last 2 years, yes, sir.
And did one or two commissioners? I don't remember.
Normally what I did was I would review the documents and then shared it with Mr. Montoya or Vice Chair Montoya, and we went ahead and made that decision.
I think we're all willing to volunteer you again for that.
Okay.
For that gig if you guys want to do it again.
Yeah. And Craig, would you like to help us with it?
Betcha.
Okay.
All right. Anything else you need from us? We'll do a vote on it, but is there any other than the three of them?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I think that's all I need is
Could I
for...
ask, the email address said 2016 awards. Is that still correct?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Rick Lifts, yes, that is correct. The Deputy Director pointed that out to me prior to the preparation of this, but we couldn't get it changed in time. So
Next time, we'll make it more generic, I guess, but good enough.
Email address was 2016 awards.
Mr. Chairman, that email address is valid. So
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to appoint Commissioner Ramos with the assistance of Commissioner Montoya and Commissioner Peterson to choose, is it one or two people?
Mr. Chairman, the recipients would be one organization or individual.
To choose one recipient, individual or organization, for receipt of an award at the governor's banquet this year. I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And then somebody will direct those emails or those nominations to Commissioner Ramos, right?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we will make sure that they get them. And
How did you receive them last
They
year?
were great. I believe Mr. Cherry did that.
Okay. Did you get them in hard copy or were they emailed to you?
I think it was a drive that he sent me,
Okay.
but however you want to do it, email.
All right. Right on. Good luck.
Good, thank you.
Seems like every meeting I get to approve another organization. Agenda item number 11, approval of department procedures for donation of license to qualified nonprofit organizations to receive donated licenses or permits, and a request to recognize the Mule Deer Foundation as a qualified nonprofit organization to receive donated licenses. Gentlemen.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Chad Nelson. I'm the licensing operations manager for Game & Fish. Today we're going to present our proposed procedures, internal procedures for license donation requests, and also present an application from the Mule Deer Foundation for approval as a nonprofit organization to accept donated licenses.
So, Mr. Chairman, as he walks through that procedure, I would just point to your books. You have that procedure in that item tab number 11, so you can follow along if you want to make any notes. Thank you.
So NMAC 19.31.3 specifies that nonprofit organizations must demonstrate their history and ability to promote hunting, fishing, and trapping in New Mexico to be approved as a nonprofit to accept donated hunting licenses for transfer to eligible recipients, which includes youth hunters and resident veterans and first responders. The proposed procedure, which we believe will eliminate any preferential treatment for any organization or recipient. Number one, all donation requests must be received in writing. We will maintain a list of nonprofit organizations that is organized by date of approval. If organizations are approved on the same date, which there were 4 approved at the last meeting, we will rank them alphabetically and add them to the bottom of the list. Donated opportunities will be provided then to the next nonprofit organization in the list. We will not give any preference. We will just go to the next organization. Nonprofit organizations will be required to provide documentation proving the recipient's eligibility in cases of veterans and first responders, and must provide an eligible recipient within a reasonable time frame. This will probably come into play in the coming year. Since we will have carcass tags, we need to get those requests transfers done so that the recipient will be able to get their license and tag. Once we receive an eligible recipient, the license will be transferred once we verify eligibility and all other licensing requirements are met, game hunting licenses, stamps, etc. So that is pretty much the procedure that we are proposing.
Did we do, I recall last meeting or two, we talked about by quadrants, but we've done away with that part of it, right?
Mr. Chairman, the way that we used to do it when there were only 2 organizations, we would ask them if they had a preference, and if they didn't, we would go with whichever was geographically closest to the hunt, to the hunt location.
So we've taken that out.
We are taking that out, yes.
Okay. Well, I think what you've described is, as you point out, fair and equitable under the circumstances. Any questions, comments, or suggestions from the commission?
I just appreciate the department making this a fair and equitable procedure for everybody. In the past few meetings, we've had organizations step up to the microphone and ask for preferential treatment on how these licenses are divvied out, and that's just not fair to everybody. And so I appreciate the department committing to a fair procedure the whole way down, so thank you.
I do have a question, and I know first responders is very open-ended. Is it defined a little bit, for that? I mean, a first responder to a middle school, fight or something that goes on. I mean, it's got to be narrowed down a little bit more and defined. Is it law enforcement? Is it game wardens? Is it ambulance, emergency crew? I don't know. I need some direction here.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Ramos, we are using the definition provided by state law, which essentially is EMTs, law enforcement, and firefighters. There is a little bit more to that, but that is generally what we are using.
So what I would suggest we do, it's not quite an audit, but you'll keep track of who's getting what and who fits in what category. So probably in a year, it makes sense to come back and show us, this is where licenses went, this is who got them, who received them. This is kind of like what we did with the youth hunters, and we found out that very young kids were perhaps getting tags when it was kind of on the bubble as to whether they should get them or not. So I think let's let it ride for a year and then come back and see how it all shakes out. So can you put that on the to-do list?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
could I ask, in an average year, how many licenses become available through this?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Rickliffs, normally we'd get about a little over 100. This past year, we had about 200 because we've publicized the program.
So you
more
go
this
through
year.
this several times as these ranked organizations get a chance at providing these licenses then?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Rickliffs, yes, as more organizations are approved, they would go to the bottom of the list and we would distribute to more organizations.
But each organization gets a chance several times throughout a year if there's 200. So,
That's correct.
thank you.
So it's just going to rotate through that
That's correct.
as you get them. Now, if you could just clarify, so someone donates a tag, let's say Wednesday, and the hunt's on Saturday. What's the last minute that can be done? And I think that needs to really be specified.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Ramos, that's going to be a little difficult, and we do get last-minute requests. What we normally do now is we route the request to an organization. We indicate that it's time-sensitive. We need a recipient as soon as possible. It is going to be a little more complicated this year because of the tag requirement. So they are likely going to have to go and get the tag in person. So a reasonable time frame, we're saying, generally last-minute requests are going to be more difficult to accommodate.
So you'll be mailing the tag, right? I mean, how other way are you going to get them? Or they're
going to have
to
to
a
get
vendor or something?
They're going to have to go to a vendor or a game and fish office and get the tag in person.
So I'm sure all these organizations will receive a letter, with all the procedures and deadlines and kind of what we're just talking about right now.
That's correct.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Good job.
Any other questions or comments on this particular part of it? And then you do have a request to recognize the Mule Deer Foundation. So let's break this up into two. And I had one more comment. On number 5, in terms of an audit, your procedure number 5, it does look like we will be receiving information that shows that someone is an eligible recipient, so it should be pretty easy to figure out who's getting what. So anyway, we'll circle back around in a year and get a report on how this procedure has worked out. Can I get a motion to approve the, actually, we have a motion already. Somebody give me a motion on the department procedures, please.
Mr. Chair? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the department established procedures for the donation of licenses to approve nonprofit organizations.
Second.
As presented today.
Second.
Any further discussion or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. And then Mule Deer Foundation.
So the Mule Deer Foundation has applied to be a qualified nonprofit organization to accept donated licenses. They have provided us with the necessary documentation demonstrating their history and ability to promote hunting, fishing, and trapping in New Mexico, and also documentation of their nonprofit status, which meets our requirements. So respectfully, I would request that you would approve them as a qualified nonprofit.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the Mule Deer Foundation as a qualified nonprofit organization to receive donated hunting licenses.
Second.
Any questions, comments, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, just a point there. I appreciate Colleen reaching out and wanting to
I'm sorry.
participate in
You
this.
wanted to talk on this one?
Oh.
Anything you want to say?
I didn't fill out the card unless I
I just want to say thank you, and thank you to all the organizations that have stepped up and wanted to be a participant. Thank you, Herb, for the support there at SCI and the continued support of getting those licenses out on the ground.
We appreciate your continued efforts to
Right on. Thank you. Number 12. Mr. Liley. Discussion for potential rule changes on the Bighorn Rule 19.31.17 NMAC for the 2019 through 2022 seasons. Hard to believe we're that far in the future. I'll be really old then. But
here.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I can't believe we're in the next 4-year rule cycle again, so be prepared for a busy year. As you well know, those that sat on the commission the last time we went through all the big game rules, this happens once every 4 years, so we're getting ready to start. And I do appreciate moving that commission date 1 week later. It really will help out as we meet our deadlines for making rule processes. So I appreciate that, and thank you very much. We are going to open up 2 rules for discussion today, Bighorn and Javelina. Bighorn's in front of you. We have already opened up 1 rule. If you recall, we opened up the pronghorn rule last fall. We were trying to get an early start on that, almost years around. So you'll see all the rules from now on. You'll see 3 times. You'll see initial presentation like this. You'll see a kind of a fleshed out where we're going to ask the commission with the new rulemaking process. At that time, you see the second presentation. We need to get more or less any ideas or what changes you would like to see in the rule. Once we leave that meeting, the department will develop the rule, put it on the Sunshine portal, put it through all the posting requirements we have, then you will come back in front of you for a final. So really, if you have recommendations or guidance that you'd like to see, this opening of the rule and the second time we present is really going to be important, because after that it's going to be very difficult for us to change the rule without having to extend the rulemaking process. So with that, I start with Bighorn for the next 4-year rule cycle. So just a little bit of background history. As many of you know, we continue to increase bighorn populations throughout the state. And last year we had our record license numbers. So we had 58 ram tags across the state, which is remarkable. 10 years ago we were less than 20 ram licenses across the entire state. And to go to 58 licenses for rams across the state, it's a pretty huge success story. Not only that, we're hunting ewes in some of these populations for management, because especially in Rockies, we've almost filled all suitable habitat and historic habitat without the state of New Mexico throughout. And so we're using ewe harvest as a management tool. We are harvesting ewes this last season in the Pecos wilderness, and you'll see before you today some of our initial recommendations is to expand some of our ewe hunting opportunities as these populations have grown. Real quick here, I just want to give you a trajectory, a trend since 2003 in both desert sheep and in Rockies. And you'll see since our last 4-year rule cycle came in, which was hard to believe, not too long ago, but right about in this region here, we've seen some substantial growth in the populations in both Rockies and deserts. At the last rule cycle, Rockies were estimated about 1,200 sheep and deserts at about 900. Now we're at 1,700 Rockies and over 1,200 desert sheep. So really it's a huge success story, and we continue to build upon it. One of the graphics that we always put up when we do rural development is just to orientate ourselves where our populations are across the state. Red is Rockies and blue is deserts. Since when we last talked about the rural development for bighorn sheep, we created a new population. We are in the midst of creating that population. That's this one right here, just outside of Santa Fe, in the Jemez and Cochiti Canyon. That population is doing extremely well. We're over 100 animals in that, and during this rule cycle, we're going to actually ask for the commission to allow for a season to be put as a temporary holder. And there we want to put a season in. We're not ready to harvest it the first year, but by the end of the rule cycle, we'll be harvesting rams in that population. So again, another success story there. So really the current proposals that we have in front of you, or what we're looking at right now, is just like every big game rule. You'll see this. We adjust the seasons for calendar dates because that 1 day shift or 2 days depending on the leap year. So we start hunts on a Saturday. So you're always getting a calendar shift. You get a creep of 1 day every single year. So within 4, 5, 7 years, you're almost a full year or a week ahead. So we move all those hunts back sometimes. So we'll do that. The other thing that we're going to do is modify hunt dates at a few of these hunts that we currently have. Last rule cycle, the Rio Grande Gorge and the Dry Cimarron were hunts that were just coming on, never hunted populations. We started hunting those. We didn't know how the hunt would be, so they were one long contiguous season because we didn't know how the animals would react to hunting. We're going to propose at this time splitting those seasons into multiple seasons now that we know how the harvest is going and how those hunts are. So we will be doing that or proposing those into split hunts. And because our population trends continue to increase, what you're going to see is and all of the sheep, it's up to numbers in rule. It's not a set number in rule because the populations do have a tendency to fluctuate more so than some of our other species. But we will be increasing all the up to numbers, both for desert ram and Rocky rams. So we're hoping that we continue to see this trend of increasing tags throughout the state for sheep. Like I stated at the beginning, we're going to ask for some additional Rocky ewe hunts. Those are going to be establishing some ewe hunts in the Rio Grande Gorge population that you'll see there in addressing the Rio Grande Gorge herd expansion. That population has done extremely well, so much it's gone. We're about at 350 animals right now, expanding. The center of the herd is right about where the Taos High Bridge is, going all the way almost to Ute Mountain. Some sheep have actually gone into Colorado and coming down into Pilar. Because of that, it's great success that they've utilized all the habitat, but we do have some disease risk with that herd because there are domestics north in Colorado on allotment, on a BLM allotment, and we do have some small flocks down by Pilar where those sheep were worried about coming into contact. We see when we were about at 300 animals in that herd, we didn't see much expansion, so we're probably going to be working with the commission and to do some proposals to maintain that herd at approximately 300 animals is probably what we're going to look at, so we don't get those big movements and have the big disease risk of those sheep moving back. We'll probably also have to look at maybe some population management hunts in that herd in the interim while we're waiting for the rule to come on, because we have had some recent movement of sheep towards domestics that has caused us some concern. With deserts, we really don't see many changes. In terms of hunt dates, just numbers going up. In terms of licenses, we've done really well with deserts, and we're continuing to expand and look to expand populations where feasible and possible. When we last came to the rule cycle, we discussed shoring up our extant herds. We've done that with the exception of one. We have one more herd that we have to shore up, and that's the Ladrones before we start a new herd. So we're doing really well. Populations are stable or growing in everything, with the exception of the Ladrones where we need to shore up that herd. And with that, I would take any questions.
Questions or comments? When do we hear this again?
Mr. Chairman, I believe you will hear this again at the next meeting. Let me look real quick.
And it's still a discussion item at that point, right?
Yes, the next meeting will be a discussion item. That will be the final time that it could be discussed. And right after that meeting, we'll go into developing the rule and posting it for rulemaking.
Let's take public comment first. Mr. Crenshaw? Happy New Year. Nice to see you again.
John Crenshaw with New Mexico Wildlife Federation, president of the organization. Good morning, commissioners. Good to see you all again, too. I did want to kind of open the conversation on the bighorn sheep again. And as it's developed, I would really hope that the department and the commission keeps in mind what the statutes actually say about units and how they're defined. And let me get to some of those because the current rule, in my opinion and that of others who actually know something, it's probably in violation. In 1996, the legislature adopted a statewide system for hunting activities, 172A2, and the relevant wording was the State Game Commission shall adopt a statewide system for hunting activities that increases participation by New Mexico residents. The current rule goes against that. And in definitions, a hunt code means a description used to identify and define the species, weapon type, and time frame authorized for a specific hunt. And 172A1C, quote, hunt code means a geographically bound area in the state that is used to manage game species. And as we saw on the map, geographically bound, I don't think goes all the way from Clayton at the Dry Cimarron down to the Gila around the San Francisco Box and Reserve. They are in the same planet, but they don't meet the criteria. Please do address this and bring it back within the statutes. And yes, it does favor residents, and I think that's the way it should be.
Does that make sense? Can you address that a little bit?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I appreciate Mr. Crenshaw's. We've had this discussion. The way that rule was put together was thoroughly vetted with that consideration of definition and statute. We respectfully do not agree with their perspective. This was a conversation, multiple conversations with legal counsel and with biologists on how best to manage. I think you can see the results of our management program over the last 4 years has been extraordinarily successful, and we continue to see a climb in bighorn sheep populations. So we are happy to have those discussions with the Wildlife Federation, and we'll continue to do that. We just respectfully disagree with their assessment.
Okay, so department says X, Wildlife Federation says Y. What's the difference between X and Y? Can someone explain that to me?
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, what they're asking us to do right now on the application for bighorn sheep, you are able to pick 3 locations in which you can go hunt. And they are stating that that doesn't fit within the designation of a hunt code or the definition of a hunt code.
So do they want it chopped into smaller pieces? The hunt?
Essentially, to remove the ability of the applicant to pick 3 locations within a hunt code to go hunt. Right now, the way, Mr. Chairman, the way the rule is set up, you have a hunt code in which is for bighorn sheep or desert, rocky or desert, and then you're able to pick those locations. That is the issue in which they are concerned about, is that you can actually pick your location. Versus what we traditionally have with all other hunt codes is you have a hunt code and you have a location, a specific, GMU 6 or whatever it may be. And so that is the distinction that they are requesting, that we put it back to multiple hunt codes for each, or a hunt code for a area.
And as you mentioned earlier, you've vetted it both under statute through legal.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, that is correct.
And how long is and we have that system currently in place, correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
How long has that been in place?
Mr. Chairman, it's been 4 years.
And from a management perspective, that's been successful?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
I think I understand the issue. Any further questions or comments? I have one more public comment from Mr. Wynn. You ready to go?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Director Sandoval. So on what you were just asking about there is the reason that they did that was when Turk was vacated a few years ago. It's more than a few years ago.
Oh, dude, you're not going to go back to that, are you?
I am. No. I'm going to explain why this is a weird thing, is why the hunt code is for the entire state, was because under Turk and under the quota statute, when Turk was vacated, depending on the way you read it, but generally people believed, and the department believed, or they wouldn't have changed this rule to make it so weird on the draw on just sheep, was there aren't any hunt codes with enough sheep to generate an outfitter set-aside tag or any outnumbers tag. So that's why it was done. And basically you end up with the the quota number. The difference is in most states for sheep, things where there's very few permits in a given hunt code, most states have a special quota for sheep. Like in Arizona, the non-residents get 10% statewide or up to 50% in any given hunt code. And so no one wanted to open the civil war of SB 196 again, so this was a way to get around that. That's just why it was done.
So I got a question for you. So there's Department X, there's Wildlife Federation Y. Are you in favor of X or Y, or is there a win system that you prefer?
Well, what I would favor is that the quota statute's corrected. I think that the heavy lifting needs to be done to go back to open the quota, to redo the quota and write a specific quota for sheep and and the oryx and the ibex. But like I said, that's a civil war that no one wants to enter. I think that both sides are afraid. If we go back and revisit that in the legislature, the outfitters, the non-residents, no one knows what you're going to end up with. I can see why people don't want to do it, but that's what needs to be done to correct that.
That's a legislative fix, you think?
It has to be, because the quota statute, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's that's from the legislature. The quota is set by the legislature, and they didn't foresee there was no quota on sheep, oryx, or ibex at the time. And so when Turk was vacated, all of a sudden we don't have a proper quota to deal with very small permit number hunt codes. So what they did is they just lumped all the Rocky Ram hunt codes together. I mean, it was a pretty slick thing to do. It worked, right? And
worked from what perspective?
If you want non-residents to hunt sheep in New Mexico, you had to do that. If you wanted non-residents and outfitters to draw tags, or people that put in with an outfitter, if you want them to draw tags, that's what it was done for. I mean, that's right?
Mr. Chairman.
Just hold on a second. Are you opposed to that?
Yeah, I am. I am. I think that what they could have done, they said, well, gee whiz, we don't have, Turk was vacated, so no longer will there be an outfitter set aside in a non-resident draw of sheep in New Mexico, because you got to have, depends on how you do the math, 10, 13 permits in a hunt code to generate those tags, right? So if it's 10%, you got to have 10 to get 1, right? Right. Or 5 to get 0.5, however you want to round. That gets into how you want to do these things.
I enjoyed I can't say I fully understood the math lesson you gave me on Turk. So, but I
don't understand it either. So we're on equal footing there.
But
honestly, I think non-residents should have permits. Should be able to draw permits. So, actually I'm in favor of it, because non-residents should be able to draw some of our tags. I think that non-residents should be able to hunt everywhere. I wish it was 80-20 across the United States, to tell you the truth, but we're not going to get that.
So let's ignore resident and non-resident. From a management perspective, are you satisfied with the results of?
Yeah, it's irrelevant to a management standpoint. I mean, the number of sheep that get killed doesn't care whether they get shot by a Texan or a New Mexican. So for management, it's irrelevant, I would think.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, for management, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Yes, sir.
What I really came up to talk about was on the Bighorn rule. One thing that I would like to see the commission look at is feeding of sheep on private land, because now that we have these private land permits, it's causing some problems between different landowners. Like one landowner that has sheep permit is feeding sheep, and another one's not. And if you talk to, the biologists and Wild Sheep Foundation, generally it's not thought to be a good idea to concentrate sheep around feeders. And so it's something that maybe you could address through rule, say, if you're going to get a private land permit, you're not going to be feeding sheep. But just put it in rule, and then there's a lot of stuff going on this stuff. So it's something to consider. It's probably not a good idea from a management standpoint. And Stuart would be able to obviously be the expert on that.
I'm going to leave that question for another day. Yes, sir.
I just want to commend the department for doing a super job with the Desert Bighorn and Rockies. And I like the pilot that you're using, how you're going to make changes based on, like up in Dry Cimarron, that area and whatnot. But I think that's a great way of thinking. I like to pilot and change, and always reflecting and changing as the data comes in. So good job on that.
I have a question for Mr. Crenshaw then. We have X, we have your Y. Under Y, then, would any non-residents be eligible for tags?
Sir, I'd have to look at the numbers. Under the current rule, they would not, because there would not be enough for the
I can guarantee you that ends up in a lawsuit.
It could.
Absolutely will.
The current system could also end up in a lawsuit.
Yeah.
But, you know, I really would prefer the commission as a partner to fix it. And just simply go back and go to the unit system that applies to every other big game animal in the state and apply the big horn shoe until the Turk decision was reversed. A lot of help from the Wildlife Federation's lawyer, by the way. And I would also, though, add, and I jumped too quickly into the statutory stuff, we are all very proud of the department and the way that this bighorn sheep population, desert and Rocky Mountains, have grown. It's just been a joy to watch.
So let me ask the question again. If we go back, as you say, to the system with hunt codes that you described, would that box out all non-residents then?
Probably. As the numbers of licenses increases, at some point there would be enough, and they are increasing, at some point under the unit system as it's always been until this particular system, at some point there would be enough tags in any given unit to trigger the other non-resident and outfitters. I don't believe there are enough now. Mr. Riley might be able to answer that.
All right. I think I've heard enough for today. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, just, and this is in general for all the new rules that we're fixing to tackle this next busy year, I really want to encourage, you know, of course, we're always seeking public input with our new electronic system, but Lance and the IT department continue with all these emails and stuff that are going out and letting us know for the public input. It's nice to base some decisions on data. Data drives need drives change, and just makes it easier for all of us. So, again, we welcome that.
I have one question somewhat unrelated to this. I recall that since I've sat on the commission in the last 5 years, we were sued by non-resident outfitters. Jason Bowles was the lawyer that sued us, as I recall. But do you recall that lawsuit?
Mr. Chairman, I do. I was involved in that lawsuit. It was actually regarding the initial implementation of the outfitter requirements, what it requires to be a New Mexico outfitter. Because when Senate Bill 196, as Mr. Wynn pointed out, was implemented, it changed the requirements to be in the outfitting pool and what it meant to be a New Mexico outfitter. And so that was the basis of that lawsuit.
And did that box out a number of non-resident outfitters?
So, Mr. Chairman, it really required non-resident outfitters to take a hard look at how they define themselves, whether they're an LLC or a single or sole proprietorship, and so it forced outfitters to take a look at how they would define themselves.
Okay. Something in the back of my mind says it's relevant some way, somehow, but I'll have to puzzle through it. Is there anything else you would like to add? I will give you the last word.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Okay, we will we'll see you next time around. I would suggest be prepared to address some of the issues we talked about today, because it seems to me that they're not going to go away the easy way. So make sure that, Mr. Payne, you ready to, you may need to step up and visit on some of the legal issues just to give peace of mind to the commission on this. Okay? All right, thank you. You're not going anywhere, are you? Agenda item number 13, discussion for potential rule changes on the Javelina Rule, 19.13.21 NMAC for the 2019 through 2022 seasons.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, again, this is just opening up the Javelina Rule for initial discussions and initial department proposals. Again, if the Commission has any guidance or any direction they would like this department to go, we'd take any input at this time. Real briefly, just want to go through the harvest data. I do not expect anyone to read line by line on that, but if you recall, we did a mid-rule cycle amendment to the Javelina Rule. For those units outside the boot hill to allow over-the-counter sale of Javelina licenses outside the core area, in mainly the southeast area, with an up to cap. Those licenses are being fully sold out, so the up to cap is met, but our harvest has not changed at all. So really, as we discussed this at the mid-rule cycle, we proposed that we wouldn't change harvest, but it would be a lot less burden in terms of hunters having to apply for those outside of the core unit areas, having to seek a unit, and then the department sell it on the fire sale basically as an over-the-counter license anyway. What we've seen is we do sell all those licenses over-the-counter, and we haven't changed our harvest rates. So it was kind of what we were suspecting, which is good. But our harvest maintains. We're about 30% success rate across the state for Javelina, which is about typical. Javelina in general, hunting mortality is not a big cause of Javelina population dynamics. Javelina can have 2 litters in one season depending on how conditions are outside. They're really driven by their environmental conditions, how habitat is. If they have 2 litters, we're going to see bigger growth. If they have 1 litter, we're going to see less. And if it's real poor conditions, they may not even have a litter that survives. So it really is environmental factors that drive Javelina population dynamics. Have the greatest reproductive potential of any native North American big game animal because of that. Really, the department's proposed changes at this time is just adjusting the calendar dates given the shift in on a Saturday start. We think the way that we're harvesting and implementing management of Javelina at this time with the over-the-counter in those southeast units and managing how we are in the Boot Hill region is working really well. And we do not have any proposed changes into the management of that. It's just proposing changes to opening dates based on the calendar date shifts. So with that, we would take any questions or any input that the commission has on anything to look at.
I don't see any public comment cards on this. I guess we'll just circle back around next month. Or next month? February, yes. All right, let's get to the fun stuff. Agenda item number 14, fiscal year 2017 department audit results and review. Mr. Varela.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Agenda item 14 is the presentation of the fiscal year 2017 financial statements and audit report. The state auditor has approved and released the department's fiscal year 2017 financial statements. State rule requires that the department present the approved financial statements for the State Game Commission approval. So a brief overview of navigating the financial statements. The first section is the management discussion and analysis. This provides a narrative representation of the information provided in the financial statements. The next section is the financial statements themselves, which is essentially the numbers and the detail. It provides information regarding the agency's revenues, expenditures, assets, and liabilities. The next section will be the supplemental information and schedules. Essentially, it's just more data related to financial statements of the agency. And the last section is the single audit, and this is an audit done on our federal awards. So the results of the audit, you can see a brief summary on pages 58 to 63 in the audit books that are provided to you. With regard to the basic financial statements, for 2016, we resolved all noncompliance issues. We did have one single finding in the 2017 audit, which I will describe in the next couple slides. And there were no audit findings regarding the federal single audit. So the first finding in 2016 that was resolved is related to terminated employees' access to SHARE, which is our statewide accounting system. During the test work in 2016, it was identified that 2 terminated employees maintained access to SHARE and other department network systems after they were terminated. We have put procedures in place to ensure that this doesn't happen for 2018, and it was resolved in 2017.
Even though they maintained access, did they actually access?
Mr. Chairman, no, they did not. But just because the access wasn't eliminated on the date that they were terminated, it's considered a finding.
Stuff happens.
The second finding that was resolved in 2016 was related to a budget overage. Essentially, the department overspent the personal services and employee benefits category in our game protection fund. We resolved this issue in 2017, and we will ensure that it doesn't happen in future years. The only finding for 2017 is related to a lack of control over work in progress for capital assets and depreciation. Essentially, the department was depreciating assets prematurely. Depreciation started at the time the cost was incurred instead of when the asset was placed into service. So we have implemented processes and procedures to make sure that when we capitalize assets, that they are depreciated at the proper time.
Can you go back to the previous slide? What does that mean?
Budget overage?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, essentially, we have a budget that's appropriated for each category in each program. And in one program, we overspent our personal services and employee benefits category. So we overspent the amount in one program, but not for the entire department.
That's what I thought.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, on the audit finding for this year, I just want to point out the depreciation. It was a matter of months, not necessarily a matter of years that they're talking about in the difference. So I think that's an important distinction. You know, we weren't taking depreciation years ahead of time.
So
it was a matter of months.
I understand depreciation and I understand getting it right, but it's just numbers on a page, right? I mean, it's not like money's missing, money's misspent. I mean, it's just auditor's going to find something. Yes. And if I recall correctly, I went to was it the Exit conference? Some of this was discussed, if I recall, at that. And I didn't understand. The impression I got from that meeting was the auditors were very satisfied with the way the department conducted itself over the fiscal year. And I won't say that this wasn't a big deal, but none of this was like the house is on fire or anything else. And so I'll say, as I say every year, in order to get an audit and a result of an audit like this, this is hard work every day, every week of a fiscal year. And it's not like you can get ready for an audit and say, all right, let's hurry up and get all this done in this week or this month. So this means that the people accounting for this are doing a great job really day in and day out, which is very important. So I applaud the department's efforts again on what I would consider a clean audit. And some of the depreciation, I never like to see significant deficiency, but from where I sit, some of that is a judgment call. And so I know the director and Mr. Varela probably fought like heck to say that's not accurate or it's a judgment call, but at the end of the day, it still remains a judgment call, so I don't see that as a black mark. But again, I applaud the department's efforts from the top down to come out clean on this. So anyway, I interrupted you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So overall, the auditors expressed an unmodified opinion for the basic financial statements, and they also expressed an unmodified opinion for the department's federal awards. For 2017, it was the first year of our new independent auditor, which is Moss Adams. The previous 6 years, we had Clifton Larson Allen. So the next two fiscal years, we will be working with Moss Adams, and we'll be improving our relationship with that audit firm.
I will say they seem pretty easy to deal with. Looks like we got a normal bunch of auditors, as normal as auditors are, but they were pleasant to work with, and I felt that they were fair in the way they were treating the department.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions.
I've talked enough. Anybody have any other questions or comments?
Good job.
Yeah. Good work. And this is an action item. Can I get a motion on this, please? Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Crenshaw. You wanted to congratulate them as well.
Come on, John.
stole my thunder, Mr. Chairman. John Crenshaw, President of New Mexico Wildlife Federation, and yes, we at the Federation really want to second what you just said. After I became president of a nonprofit, I learned more about audits than I really wanted to know. And yes, it makes people's eyes glaze over, but they've done a very fine job with a very, very complex system with tens of thousands of licenses to keep track of in the federal aid programs. It's really, really a challenge, and they show that they're up to it. And this kind of arcane sort of eye-glazing work really sets the solid platform that makes the rest of the outfit work. And I'm really happy to see this. It's good for the department, the commission, and all the sportsmen too. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind words. Can I get a motion on this, please?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the department's audit report for fiscal year 2017.
Second.
Any further questions or comments, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it.
Thanks, Paul.
Why don't we take a quick break?
Paul?
I felt like coffee and scrambled eggs.
Huh? I have one at the office already.
You've already got a fine. Oh, those aren't the good ones, are they?
These with
Oh,
the
yeah.
strawberry and the
Oh,
mint?
okay, all
Yeah.
right.
It's to be a time when you signed in black. Okay, we're back on the record, and now we've got a couple of rule hearings. Agenda item number 15A, informational rule hearing on proposed new rule on rulemaking 19.30.17 NMAC per the State Rules Act, Section 14-4-1 NMSA 1978. Let's see. Okay. On this script portion of this, opening the hearing, is that only for the rulemaking portion or for the informational portion?
Mr. Chair, this will be for the rulemaking process. So at this point, you will actually begin with that opening statement. Thank you.
This hearing will please come to order. My name is Paul Kinzel. I'm the chairman of the State Game Commission. I'll be serving as a hearing officer and be advised by the Commission's counsel for Office of the Attorney General, Mary Lou Poley. The purpose of this hearing is to address a new part in rule and amendments to an existing rule. First agenda item 15A of the hearing is for the Commission to receive public comment on proposed new part in Title 19, Chapter 30, Part 17 of the New Mexico Administrative Code regarding establishing procedural rules for public rule hearings for use by the Commission and the Department of Game and Fish consistent with the State Rules Act, and to facilitate public engagement with the administrative rulemaking process in a transparent, organized, and fair manner. This is a result from new language in statute section 14-4-5.8 NMSA 1978, which was passed in the 2017 legislative session and became effective in July 2017. I will pick up the second one. Second agenda item 16A of the hearing is for the Commission to receive public comment on an amendment in Title 19, Chapter 31, Part 4 of the New Mexico Administrative Code regarding amending A, change language in Item 2, subparagraph A, Paragraph 4, subsection A, dear God, of 19.31.4.11 NMAC to add a 2.5-mile portion of the Rio de los Pinos from the USSF boundary 24 at the junction of the Forest Road 284 and 87A upstream to the private property boundary. A stretch of river is being added to the special trout water list with a 2-trout limit and tackle restrictions. Registrations on this stretch are unchanged from previous years. And B, Change in language in item 2, subparagraph A, paragraph 4, subsection A of 19.31.4.11 NMAC to add a portion of the Rio Grande from the New Mexico/Colorado border to the Taos Junction Bridge. The stretch of river is being added to the special trout water list with a 2-trout limit and no tackle restrictions. This change represents a reduction in bag limit from 3 trout to 2 trout to protect the fishery resource and improve consistency of regulations. This hearing is being conducted in accordance with the provisions of the Game and Fish Act and the State Rules Act. The hearing is being audio tape recorded. Anyone interested in a copy of the audio tape record should contact Sandra Ducharme with the Game and Fish Department. Public notice of this hearing was advertised in the New Mexico Register, the Albuquerque Journal, and the Santa Fe New Mexican, the New Mexico Sunshine Portal, and on the department's website. Copies of the proposed new rule have been available on the department's website and at the department office. Those here today, please sign the attendance sheet at the back of the room, which will later be entered into the record as an exhibit. So I think that concludes the informational, or the prelude into the informational part. I believe we hear from you on that, and then we'll go into the formal rulemaking hearing portion, correct?
Mr. Chair, there's one more section that, that for the record, the instructions. It starts with this rule hearing will be conducted in the following manner.
Oh, so you want me to explain that now rather than in the next section?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. I'm easy. This rule hearing will be conducted in the following manner. Staff will present pre-filed exhibits. Exhibits admitted into evidence are available for review by the public, but exhibits may not be removed from this room. Colonel Griego will enforce that rule strenuously. After all exhibits are entered, we will proceed to the presentation of the proposed rule, after which testimony will be taken from the audience. Typically, there will be a limit on the amount of time for testimony, but we'll handle that on the fly. Usually it's a 2 to 3 minute time limit. In order to ensure that the hearing is accurately recorded, only one person at a time shall be allowed to speak. Any person recognized to speak is asked to, number 1, identify yourself by name and who you are affiliated with for the record each time that you are recognized to speak, and 2, speak loudly and clearly so the recorder can accurately record your comments. After a person has offered comment, we will stand for questions from the hearing officer or other commission members. The audience may also ask questions of anyone offering comments after being recognized by me. This hearing is not subject to judicial rules of evidence. However, in the interest of efficiency, I reserve the right to limit any testimony deemed irrelevant, redundant, or unduly repetitious. The commission may discuss the proposed rules after public comment portion of the hearing. Final commission action, including adoption of the rules, may occur after the conclusion of the presentation and public comment period of the hearing. And with that, I think you can now do your informational portion of this.
Mr. Chair, so I would have some exhibits to enter, I think.
Mr. Chair, there's one more line that
Okay.
starts with this hearing is now open.
More preliminary matters. Okay, sooner or later we're going to get this right. New rule procedure for public hearings. This hearing is now open. Are there any exhibits for proposed new part in rule to 19.30.17 for the record?
Mr. Chairman, there is. I'd like to produce 3 exhibits. The first exhibit is a notice of the rulemaking hearing that was published on December 12th on the New Mexico Register. The second exhibit will be the actual initial proposed rule, which you should have in front of you in your books as well in regards to rulemaking. And then an adoption or a copy of the slideshow that presentations that you're going to see today.
Okay, those are 3.
And yes, and just as a note, the comment period was 30 days. We have received no email comments or written comments through the department at this time, which usually is part of the record.
So exhibits 1, 2, and 3 are admitted into the record. Thank you. Now you can tell me about a proposed new rule for 19.30.17.
All right. So rule on rulemaking. I think we talked about this back in November. So what the department has proposed to do is when House Bill 58 passed the legislative session last year, it was signed into governor by law. During that bill, there was new amendments and new sections added to the rule. One section in particular, which brings us here today, is that it allows each agency to adopt a procedural rule, which you have in here for conducting their rule hearings. So for those agencies that choose not to adopt a rule, it allows or it requires that they follow a defunct, or not a defunct, but a standard rule that's going to be proposed by the Attorney General's office, or a default rule, excuse me, is what I'm looking for. So we're here today to present to you a initial proposed rule for final adoption that is specific to our agency, which follows the State Rules Act. So the objective, the department is requesting the adoption of the rule for public hearings, much like the one we're having today and the ones that we've had in the last 3 meetings. So we have what we did was we petitioned the New Mexico Records Act for a new pardon rule. So this will be under our administration. Hence, it's a new rule. There is no strike through. We're not changing anything. It's a complete new rule into NMAC, basically. So what the rule does, and it follows basically the additions, the amendments to the House Bill 58. It's going to describe the initiation process of the rule, what the requirements for initiating a rule, and basically what that involves is when the department actually provides notice, and notice is going to be required to publish it on the register and provide to the public. That is when we are starting the initiation process of the rule. So I know we heard earlier when we started talking about meeting dates and Stuart and how we're planning these things out. So the register only publishes twice a month, and then it has another 14-day requirement that we get them, proposed rules in front of them before it's actually publishes. Hence setting the meeting dates and the occurrences in time, because there has to be at least a 30-day window for the public, which we would publish on the website. We send it to the Sunshine Portal, notifying them that we're amending a rule or making a new rule and such like that. But that notice itself is the initial proposed of rulemaking process. Second part of that is describe what is actually in the notice. So as we go through the rule down here, I know we reference a lot of the statute here, but basically what the requirement in the notice is that, one, we're saying we're going to have a public hearing. We're going to describe the date and time. We're going to describe what the purpose of the notice or the hearing is, of the rule changes that are implemented. We could also provide the whole rule, or we can give a synopsis, which typically we're doing just a synopsis on that. And the third part of the rulemaking notice that is a requirement is how the public can comment to that rule. So within those 30 days, we put up a website. We put it on our website. We send it to our district, our field offices. We also send it to the Sunshine Portal. We send it to the Legislative Finance Council and any other interested persons that have requested to see the rule. That's part of the Senate Bill 50 or House Bill 58 requirements for us to do that, preloading before we have a hearing. For the written comment period, which is the next section and part of the rule, it just pretty much describes how individuals can submit comments. Obviously, through the email, it's a requirement that we provide an email method for people to comment. They could also write letters through snail mail and send them to us, but it also describes that they're at the hearing itself. Much like today, there would be a potential to hear oral comments at the hearing. Obviously, you hear that 30 days, so prior to any kind of rule hearing, we do have to let the 30 days elapse to receive those public comments. And again, on this particular agenda item, we have received no email comments through their website, unless you have a stack of cards up there. I'm not sure how many we're going to have today, if any at all.
Oh, there's a ton of them.
There's a ton of them. I'm assuming that. So the next section of that rule is the procedures for conducting a public hearing. So much like the script that you're reading today, we're going to describe how the hearing goes. We're going to set a venue. We're going to advertise it to the public, let them know when it's going to occur, how to submit exhibits into the record. And we have followed it. Like I said, we followed it the last 3 or 4. I think we're getting a little bit better at it as we go along, and maybe it's something that we can do. But a lot of it is giving the opportunity for the public to have a chance at the hearing to provide comment and concerns. Then we have the actual record. So if the the commission so chooses to adopt the record or adopt the rule. That sits in a sequence of events of what is contained in the record. When we provide the record, we are required by these rule processes to keep that record at the department. We are required to, again, send it out provide to the public, which is meaning sending it to the Sunshine Portal, sending it to the Legislative Finance Council, and anybody that has requested to receive that record. Then the filing and publication date. After the adoption of rule, unless a written order is made by this commission or during the hearing, the adoption date is typically the date that you guys vote on it. Unless a written order is, we have 15 days to adopt that rule, which means 15 days we got to go to the New Mexico Register and get the rule filed on the register. Along with the rule itself, we also have to supply to them a concise explanatory statement, which is none more than the date that the commission adopted the rule. It's our legal authority for adopting the rule, then any findings of fact or findings per that rule. And the last section of this rule is the emergency rules. So I guess the only thing that I would say insignificant as far as the statute requires is there are 3 items that allows for an emergency rule. One is for public safety and health. If the rule has any kind of effect that would affect the public, you're allowed to do an emergency rule. The second is if you run out of funding for a particular program of the agency, that would be considered an emergency and allowable to do an emergency rule by that. And the third would be any kind of conflict with any kind of federal law. I guess the biggest thing I would make about emergency rules is they are temporary, the way they are stated. As soon as they become effective, so as soon as they've either filed with the New Mexico State Register with whatever that effective date is, they're only valid for 180 days. So if that was something that if the commission, let's say, passed an emergency rule and they wanted it to be permanent, the emergency rule can take effect pretty immediately. But if it was something they wanted to be prolonged after 180 days, we would have to start the whole regular process for rulemaking, allowing the whole comment period and stuff like that. And I think with that, I'll try to answer it.
So who wrote this set of rules?
Mr. Chairman, that was a collaboration between myself, the director, Mary Lou Poley, our Attorney General, and Jacob.
So department and the Attorney General's office have weighed in on this set of rules?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
And without absolutely binding the Attorney General's office, this passes muster, at least today, under the Attorney General's standards?
Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Let me say, from a chairman's perspective and a hearing officer's perspective, I've read the rule. It's not perfect, but nothing's ever perfect. I think it does provide for some flexibility in dealing with issues that do come up during hearings. Of most concern to me is on issues that do draw a lot of public comment and maybe have a meeting where there's a lot of people that wish to comment. I think it does allow the flexibility to limit how much time people speak, basically to have the hearing conducted in a simple and efficient manner. So it's never necessarily my intention to cut people off mid-sentence, but I do think this set of rules does give the flexibility to handle those types of situations where, but for some limit on testimony, we may be here for a week. So that's of concern to me as a hearing officer. As for the timing of when you post and all the other things, that's largely out of our hands. And so I think that the rules basically track with what's required by statute. I will tell the public, as I've told them before, the best way to have meaningful input into decisions of the commission and proposals that are generated by the department is submit written comments. It gives both the department and the commission the opportunity to coolly and calmly reflect on what people are concerned about. A public meeting, while very valuable for transparency purposes and the ability to say what you wish to say, is not always the best place to make policy. So I would encourage the public, do both. Submit written comments prior to a meeting during the written comment period, and then show up at a meeting if you choose to do so. But I firmly believe that written comments are the best way to get your initial point across. Certainly, public comment at a meeting can drive home a few important points, but it's not always the best place to make policy. I'll also say from a federal standpoint, which I think House Bill 58 sort of tracks the federal model on this, people routinely submit written comments, sometimes in the tens of thousands, on particular rule changes. And that's a pretty good model because it allows the professionals that deal with these issues every day to digest those, and under the heading of more heads are better than one, when the public does weigh in on these issues, the professionals that deal with this can say, oh, I hadn't thought of that, or that's a good idea. And it's at that point in time when a proposal's under development that it can be easily changed before it gets to us for final rulemaking. So I would encourage the public to get involved in the rulemaking process early rather than later in the process. It's much easier to get things changed and get things on the right track early rather than later. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I have a couple questions for the department. I'm not sure who's the best to answer them. So generally speaking, is it clear from the way this is worded on who can show up, who is an interested person? And are they a party to the rulemaking, or are they only there for public comment? And I've run into this issue sitting on other administrative boards when, there's a big difference between the public showing up and giving public comment and their information that they want to give through public comment, and then there is somebody showing up wanting to present evidentiary exhibits or information that may or may not be authenticated, or maybe we just decide what's relevant and where it's coming from. But I have been involved in instances where people just show up without ever entering appearance and expect to not be in the public comment side of things and be, attorneys are present, and really to have an additional level of participation over and above public comment. And so my question is, is that clear in the way this is written now that they can't do that? Or if someone wants to participate in the rulemaking process, like as a party and present evidence or something, how is that handled?
I'll give it a shot first, and then Donald. So, Mr. Chair and Commissioner, interested person, I think that's what you're asking is it been defined? If it hasn't, the AG's office views it very, very broadly, and that an interested person would be anybody, for example, today, who showed up for this rulemaking hearing and put their name down, and if they provided an email address, then the results of what happens here today would then be emailed to them. Anybody that even during the 30-day comment period makes an email, makes a comment during that 30-day period, they're considered an interested party. Literally, if you're interested, you're an interested person. So I think I said party.
That's really public comment, right?
And so what I would further add to that, and I'm not with the Attorney General's office, but if you're an interested person, you're going to be treated like anyone else. And so I see interested person the same way you do. It's whoever shows up and wants to speak, but you don't get a special privilege just because you think you've got more of a dog in the hunt than somebody else. Right. I think everyone is treated the same. So there's no, hey, I'm a lawyer for this person, I'm going to speak for 30 minutes on this issue. It doesn't work that way. I think if you want to get your 30 minutes out there, you submit that as a written comment long before it ever gets here. You don't get the floor in a manner that's different than the rest of the public.
There's no opportunity for anyone really to like enter an appearance in the proceeding, present evidence in a rulemaking, nothing like that. You're an interested person, you can show up and give public, written or oral public comment, and that's the extent of anyone else's participation.
I think if you're an interested person and you show up with a stack of paper, as I took
This
5 minutes
happened to me
before earlier,
before.
I say, this is a really poor time to
Right.
provide this much information, which is not to say we'll ignore it or won't consider it, but I think it's very hard to digest that kind of information on the fly.
Right.
So I think let's
So
get
this
it out.
limits that people's ability to be able to show up and expect some kind of ability to present things for the record and argue for or against.
Let me just jump in one more time and say, on rulemaking, it's things that are generally of broad applicability to everybody. So to take the example of what was the name of the dam we dealt with just recently?
Something.
I can't remember.
Mr. Chairman, Laguna del Campo.
That's it. So on that one, which isn't strictly rulemaking, I would expect people to get up and speak kind of at length on that, more so than on a general, a rule of general applicability. And so, yeah, I just don't think anyone gets a special privilege no matter what the issue is.
And then when these interested persons show up, from what this says here, that the commission may, if we so desire, ask them a question. But I want to confirm that they don't have the ability to start interrogating the department or the commission on anything.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, that's correct. If I may take a moment just to back up on the discussion between yourself and Mr. Chair. And, for example, Mr. Chair gave an example of somebody showing up with a stack of papers. Whatever somebody shows up with, it will be entered. It is required by law to be entered as an exhibit. But logically speaking, of course, could somebody digest that during the hearing? No. So it would be extremely unfortunate if somebody has valuable information for them to show up with it the day of the hearing. But to clarify, it is required to be a part of the record.
Be admitted part of the record.
That's correct. That's correct. Everybody gets equal treatment.
Okay, my only note, and I don't think that this hurts the notice issue, but you can advise on that in subsection 14, right after NMSA, it needs to be inserted 1978. It's just a typographical fix.
Mr. Chair,
I think that's
Commissioner,
consistent.
yes, it is, and we'll make that correction. I don't believe that's a substantive change, and we can make that today and move it forward.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And as I said at the outset, this is not perfect from my perspective, and if it's not working out for us, we'll change it down the road, or we'll tweak it here and there. But I think it's a reasonable start for a process where we're still finding our feet on how it shakes out. And I share your concerns. Certainly, as a lawyer, or somebody hires me and says, "Go do this." To be limited to a certain amount of time isn't necessarily appealing. Might make my job easier, but it's not appealing if I have a lot to say. But I think there is the opportunity during this written comment period to really get out everything that you want to say and get it out much more effectively than if you were to speak at a public meeting. I think it may show a depth of feeling or interest in the issue to hire counsel and have them show up, because I think it does drive home perhaps the point to the department of the commission that somebody really cares about this. But again, the better way to do it is probably handle it through written comments. Any questions, comments from the public or anything else from commissioners? So if there's no more public comment or questions from the department, I'll close that part of it. Are there any other exhibits anyone wants to enter into the record? We have exhibits 1, 2, and 3 that were entered.
I have those.
You do have those? Okay. So no additional exhibits, so we've just got 1, 2, and 3. So I think that then closes the informational portion of this.
Mr. Chair, except for public comment, if there is any.
And I asked, I don't think there is. Nobody, you got, changed your mind, you're going to speak, okay.
Based on something you said. So, Michael Dax with Defenders of Wildlife, Chairman, Commissioners. Chairman, you had mentioned, and you've mentioned this to me before, that the best way is written comment prior to when we get in this room. I don't believe your email addresses are currently on the department's website. I believe there's a P.O. box, which I think makes it more difficult for the public, if they do have a comment, to be able to contact you or any of you ahead of time. So I don't know if that is something that you've considered or if that's something that could be remedied. I think it's all the same P.O. box, so I assume that's handled by the department. And for you guys down south, I imagine you're obviously not personally checking it, and I don't really know how that system might work. But I think email would make it more accessible for the public if they want to comment on something. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, Michael, don't walk away. Per the rules, we need to have you fill out that form, and that will be exhibit number 4, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay with
Sure.
you.
Works for me. An email address, there is a written email address for comments to go to that eventually get disseminated.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
I've really enjoyed having email comments in the past that included death threats. That's not necessarily appealing to me. Now, to the extent death threats come into a common email address, somebody else can read them first and be alarmed rather than me by myself. But there is a means for getting those written comments to commissioners in advance of rulemaking hearings.
Mr. Chairman, we'll be sure to do that.
I would ask, if we do get comments on a particular issue, is that part of the public record? Do we need?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Rickard, yes, it is. So any comments that we receive through the email, we collect, and we disseminate that, and then it does become part of the public
If
record.
it's identified as a particular issue that is before the commission, then that's part of the public record.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Rickard, that is correct. It is part of the record.
That comes to us.
Well, I think, was your question if you get an email?
Personally, yes. Yes, personal email from public interested parties.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, it's a good question, and it's one that hasn't been presented through the AG's office that I'm aware of. However, I wholeheartedly would opine that it would not be a part of the record, that it would need to go to whatever designated email address the department has provided.
I would add along those lines that we're a citizen commission, and I'm not strictly set up to handle, at least from a House Bill 58 perspective, the written comments that may come in on a particular issue. So I think that's why during the written comment period they need to come to a central email address so there's organization to the chaos. So you get one comment, no big deal. You end up with 500 comments. I don't want to be wading through those as a citizen commissioner wondering, do I need to preserve this? Do I need to send this to somebody? So I think in order to have, I guess, what I would call a valid written comment, it needs to go to that common identified email address to make it legitimate. Okay. So I think I can close item 15A and move on to...
So, Mr. Chairman, we do have exhibit number 4, which is Mr. Dax's.
It's admitted. Yeah, it's admitted. Okay. I'm going to do the rule. I'm going to vote on 15, do the actual rulemaking on 15B, and then move on to 16 after that.
Of course, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so you signed the sign-in sheet. Is that also part of, would that be Exhibit 5?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it goes with Exhibit 4.
Okay. And you took care of that? All right. I've admitted that then as Exhibit 4. The comments submitted and testimony heard during this rule hearing will be reviewed by the Commission and discussed during the open session of today's meeting. The Commission will vote on the proposed rule in 15A and B at this time. Thank you for your participation, and let the record show that this particular portion of the rulemaking hearing was adjourned at what time is it?
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock, Mr. Chairman.
11 a.m. Thank you. Okay, so that concludes 15A, the informational portion. 15B is the actual action item on this. And let's see. I don't think I have anything else that I need to read in particular definite to this, correct?
So I'd like to clarify, please, Mr. Chair. You had said that it closed the rule hearing, and just for the record, everything that you gave in the preliminary statement will apply to the next amendment that's to the rule that's proposed. So the rule hearing is technically still open, right. And we've closed the record on that one particular rule regarding the rulemaking procedure, and we'll move on to the next rule and vote after both have been heard.
Okay, 15A. And so I'm going to vote on 15B at this point in time, then.
If you wish.
I would prefer to do a vote on that now at the close. So,
motion.
Let's do a motion, yes.
I move to adopt new rule 19.30.17 NMAC procedural rule for public rule hearings as presented, and allow the department to make minor corrections to comply with filing this rule with state records and archives.
Second.
Questions, comments, discussion from commissioners? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. All right. Brave new world under House Bill 58.
Oh, thank you, Governor.
Okay. So what pre-filed exhibits do you have? Hearing is now open. Are there any exhibits that you've got that you wish to pre-file?
Mr. Chairman, there are. I have a CD containing the notice of rulemaking, the data relied upon in developing the rule, public meeting materials, including sign-in sheets and public comments, the statewide fisheries management plan, responses to public comments, and the proposed and final rule, as well as a copy of my presentation today.
Exhibit, what numbers are those?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it would be Exhibits 1 through 8.
1 through 8. Okay. Exhibits 1 through 8 are admitted into the record.
Mr. Chairman, just to verify, there you have 7 there on your list. Is that correct? 6. 6, excuse me. Exhibits 1 through 7 have now been admitted to me.
6 or 7?
There's, well, Mr. Chairman, he has 6 on the CD, and there is 1 in my hand.
Understood. All right, exhibits 1 through 7 are entered. You can go ahead and introduce the proposed amendment for Rule 19.31.4.
Thank you. As you recall, you adopted the rule for the fisheries rule in your November meeting, but due to an omission on my part, I need to come back and amend that rule. And it's a very simple amendment, adding the Rio de los Pinos and the Rio Grande from the Colorado border to the Taos Junction Bridge as special trout waters. Both the Rio de los Pinos and the Rio Grande have been special trout waters. The only change in their regulation is putting them into the green chili for the Los Pinos and Christmas for the Rio Grande, and a reduction in bag limit on the Rio Grande from 3 to 2. As we discussed before, we had multiple public meetings. We've received approximately 23 public comments prior to the amendment, and then one specific to the amendment that was a blanket disapproval of any special trout waters. We've posted it on the web and done a news release, so we've met all those requirements. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Any public comment on this? I don't have any comment cards. Any questions or comments?
I've got one question, Mike. On the Los Pinos, it's going to be at the green chili 2-bag. So at the private property, what's above that? Does that apply to that too, or is it?
No, the normal regulations would apply above.
I was just wondering. Thank you. Could you make it apply, or is it because of private property we can't?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, in general, we could make it apply, although we would work with the private property owner to make sure they were comfortable with that.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Any other exhibits from anybody or from you?
None from me, Mr. Chairman.
Out of exhibits, okay. No other comments, no other exhibits. We've admitted exhibits 1 through 7 into the record already. I don't think we've had anyone sign in, so there should be no attendance sheet other than a blank one. You want to do we won't do one. Let's see. The comments submitted and testimony heard during this rule hearing will be reviewed by the Commission and discussed during the open session of today's meeting. The Commission will vote on the proposed rule at that time. Thank you, everyone, for your participation today. Let the record show that this rulemaking hearing was adjourned at
11:07.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would request that you fill out a card in the sign-in sheet. So we can do that.
But I didn't know that was what I had to put out. I'll do that. It's just a comment, nothing crazy.
Let's have at it.
Okay, so I just wanted to say, as a citizens advisor, thank you very much for everything. But I'm going on board
Please
with
state your name for the record. Thank you.
Julian Gonzalez. We did approve a vault restroom for the Rio de los Pinos because that was something that a lot of sportsmen. I'm like where the rubber meets the road for the Game Commission, and I go out there into the field and I get all as much information as I can for the Game and Fish, and we fund. Of course, you know the system. But we're looking at maintenance on the road up there. That was a big concern of sportsmen, and a restroom. So you're getting one. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. So we will now enter the attendance sheet as number
8,
8.
Mr. Chairman.
Is that not going to make the fish smaller?
Okay. So record closed. We will show that we were adjourned at what time now?
11:09.
11:09.
11:09. Okay, a.m. All right. Then we will move to the actual rulemaking. Can I get a motion on this item, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the amendment to the Fisheries Rule 1931 for NMAC as presented and to allow the department to make minor corrections to comply with filing this rule with state records and archives.
Second.
Any further discussion, question, or comment? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 17, close the executive session. We need a roll call on this. I need
Mr. Chairman, I believe we need a motion for that.
I move to adjourn into executive session, closed to the public pursuant to Section 1015-1H2 NMSA 1978 to discuss limited personnel matters relating to complaints and discipline, and pursuant to Section 10-15-1H7 on matters subject to attorney-client privilege relating to threatened or pending litigation in which the Commission and/or the Department is or may become a participant as listed in Agenda Item 17, subsections A and B.
Second.
All in favor, roll call vote.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Ramos?
Aye.
Commissioner Rickliff?
Yes.
Commissioner Ryan?
Yes.
Commissioner Solopek?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Montoya?
Yes.
Chairman Kinzel?
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the public, commissioners, we will be adjourning into that small room off there on the wing, I believe. Sandra, is that correct?
This commission had adjourned into executive session closed to the public. During the executive session, the commission discussed only those matters specified in its motion to adjourn, and it took no action as to any matter. I've got one public comment. David Metacucci.
Ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Dave Metacucci, and I'm going to speak today about an issue of mobility access at the Valles Caldera National Preserve. Now, I understand there's a jurisdictional issue. You all manage the game, they manage the property. Well, it means we have to cooperate. So let me tell you a little bit about me, and then let me tell you about the problem. I only have a couple minutes, so I'll be very brief, but I'll hang around afterwards and talk more details if you want. I am a retired engineer from Sandia Labs and a UNM professor. And since I've retired, I've done a lot of writing on outdoor issues, mobility issues being the key one. My wife and I own property south of Valles Caldera and in La Cueva. And I've also done research out on the preserve. I am a registered New Mexico guide, although I don't guide for a fee anymore. The issue at hand is the problem that the Park Service has encountered with maintenance. Park Service overall is $12 billion in a hole, $12 billion in the hole on maintenance throughout their system. They can't maintain roads, they can't maintain buildings, and it's hitting the Valles Caldera. One of the problems is that the Valles Caldera Jorge looks at the situation, says we can't maintain these roads. They're sometimes dangerous, especially during icy and muddy conditions. Therefore, we're going to close them. Well, that's a very good deal if you're a hiker, if you're young and you're mobile and you can get in there. But if you're a mobility hunter, you're having a very difficult time because what has been left is just two roads open. One is VCO 201, VCO 2 and VCO 1 that goes right down north and south through the middle of the preserve, and the VCO 9 that goes along the northern edge. Now, the elk, as most of you know, have pretty good intelligence, and when they see a lot of people on those roads, they skedaddle up to the setos and they're gone. So it's very difficult to hunt in there if you're not fully mobile. I think there's some simple solutions. One of them I articulated in the article that I wrote about this in the Albuquerque Journal. You have a copy of that. It's from Dennis Trujillo, who suggested a private-public partnership between the Park Service and the grazers. And I have talked with a couple of lawyers about this, including Bill Kelleher. You probably know Bill Kelleher. And we don't think there are any CFR prohibitions against the Valles Caldera to engage in this kind of a partnership, set fees as responsible, as appropriate, so that the ranchers would then exchange a lower fee for, say, maintaining roads. But I talked to Dennis yesterday about a possible solution involving El Cajete. I don't know if you know about the preserve, but El Cajete is a very nice mobility area in the southwest part of the preserve. We think that could be opened for the mobility hunts and for mobility hunters. It wouldn't cost the preserve, neither one of these would cost the preserve anything. It would just cost them a little bit of effort in doing something outside the ordinary. Now, what I would recommend is that we sit down with Jorge. I'd like to get a representative of the commission, the department, the mobility community. Let's sit down with the commission and let's talk about these issues. Let's see if we can start getting some of these reopened for the mobility hunters, and let's really not turn this place into an exclusive elitist area only for young mobile hunters. I'm not officially disabled, but I sure can't walk like I used to, and I sure don't drag elk out of the for us like I used to. So we deserve an opportunity to use this preserve that we paid into for many years. And I think with the weight and the influence of the commission and the department and the cooperation of Jorge and his team, I think we can do something. So I'd invite you to work with us. Dennis said he would help. Tom Arvis, I talked to yesterday, he said he was interested in helping. And there's a number of people in the mobility community that were interested in seeing if we can solve this problem.
I got a few comments on this. We've fought this battle already some years ago. There's some organizations in this room that opposed the department effectively managing this particular piece of property. And so while I'm never one to say no for all time, we've fought this battle already and we lost. And so someone else can go fight the battle and not quite bring it to me gift wrapped, but you'll get our cooperation when we see from other folks that they're ready to cooperate and give us some measure of management and, if not control. I mean, we're happy to spend our money and our resources to make all those things happen, but I'm not going to go tilt against windmills again when, again, some of the organization, at least one organization in this room, opposed control or any management by the department back in the day. So if you're able to get buy-in from those groups and organizations, give the department management, we'll sit down at the table and hammer that out. But I'm reluctant to commit department resources today in an effort that we already tried and were unsuccessful at. So call it sour grapes or what you will, but we offered up that some years ago, and it was rejected. And I'm sympathetic to you. You're not the first one to come to us and say this is being, if not mismanaged, not managed according to best practices or, in a way that's most user-friendly to the public. And I'm totally sympathetic to that, but cracking through that federal wall and getting done the things you suggest is not... Unfortunately, it's not just a bunch of people sitting around a table and shaking hands. I mean, it's not an easy thing to get done. So if someone wants to do the spade work, or if there's a commissioner or someone at the department that the director wants to dedicate to this and try and solve the problem, I'm totally in favor of it. But I'm not going to say, you have to go do this, because as I recall, we tried this once before, and they're like, I don't even think it was thanks or no thanks. I think it was just dead silence on the part of the people that were in charge of it. And I'll say again, everyone seems, not everyone, there is some segment of the public and organizations that are deathly afraid of management by the state. They see that as some, or the dark side of federalism, if you will, where we're going to close things or we're going to, sell it off to oil interests or something else. And I just don't think that's the case. This commission, this department does not have a history of doing that. So we tried to say, well, we'll be good stewards of this particular piece of property. Give us the opportunity to do just what you've suggested. And again, I think we were met with silence, not even a no. We just never got an answer to the question. So if someone can demonstrate for me, I'd say this time in writing, series of friendly emails or something like that saying, we'd like to solicit the department or the commission's assistance in this. Sure, we'll sit down, but I'm reluctant to commit commission and department resources to an effort that's already failed before. So it's probably more than you wanted to hear, but that's kind of where I stand. I don't know about the rest of the commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to comment a little bit on that, and I agree with you exactly what you just said. We definitely fought that battle, but one of the things that I'm afraid of as we move on down the road, that they do away with the hunting and fishing opportunities there, and this might be a deterrent to close roads where our constituents and people that put in, aren't going to put in there for it because they're not going to get a quality experience. But I would hope that I could wrap my brain around the different hunts that are there currently with the situation and see what we can do with a new rule, whether and I don't know how many permits we allow in there, handicap permits, Stuart, just off the top of my head, if there's 25 or whatever, but if we can maybe break them down, or
I think there's 15 on the mobility.
15 mobility. Like I said, I need to wrap my brain around it, but I hope that we don't just give up on that. But I hope that there could be some conversations to open up an area, as you recommended, within that park service property.
Are the hunts there still by lotto, or do we switched it like statewide?
It's been switched to the statewide draw.
It shows you I haven't put it in there, and I'll shut up.
Any other questions or comments on this issue? I sympathize with you completely. But if someone can demonstrate for me that federal government's ready to engage in this, not just anecdotally, but sends us something formally that says we'd like to sit down with you, then I think that's a good invitation to go down that road. So it sounds like you've made some of those inroads, and I think we're happy to participate once we show a willingness on the other side. But we made a lot of effort back in the day to get this done, and in fact, I sat down with Senator Udall's staff at one point to protect the right to hunt, fish, and trap in that area, and that was in doubt until it wasn't, and so even on the top line item, can you hunt, fish, and trap in this area? That was a tough sell, and so shared management, if you want to call it that, is an even tougher sell. But we do have we will make the resources, the people, and the dollars available, I believe, to get that done. But I've got to see a willingness on the other side, much more so than we saw the last time, where we were just sort of flatly rejected on that issue. So I appreciate you bringing it up. Does that help?
You haven't said anything that I disagree with. I kind of look at it this way. We got dealt a bad hand of cards, and now I think what we have to do is just suck it up and see what we can do to.
And I would venture to guess, with most federal lands around the country, they're chronically underfunded.
Yes.
And so, under the heading of, bring the problem as close to home as possible, whether it's state or local government, we're in a great position to help stop that gap or fix that problem. But it requires a willingness in the federal government to share some of that control. And I know from having just tussled over the wolf for, depends upon your timeline perspective, but 5 years or 35 years, that getting that handshake of cooperation doesn't come easy. And so I don't know if they're looking at me sideways going, who's this guy? And, can we trust him, or do we not want to give away any of our power, or whatever the mindset is? But I know the department and this commission, we stand ready to cooperate with anybody who is willing to visit with us and sit down and shake hands. So what I would suggest, as I've told other people in your position, is don't give up on this. Continue to do the hard work. Try and put people together via email, loop, whether it's looping me in, the director in, loop us in, and we can start the process of trying to come to terms on this. But I would suggest don't give up. Work harder to get it done.
We won't. And I just appreciate you listening to this. And Ralph, I appreciate your comments. And Dennis Trujillo is very much with us on this, along with others. And Ms. Sandoval, I wanted to compliment you on the department. I'm doing some research right now and writing an academic article on the benefits of hunting. And the more I look into this, this is the hunting, the conservation model, the North American conservation model, is really a good model to use to be applied to our public lands, which are really in disarray. So you've done a good job, and I think with one exception of Ms. Morgan, one of your department claimed that I could only talk to the department in writing, but I got to Dan Williams, and he provided me with a lot of info. So thank you very much. I really appreciate what you do. You provide very, very valuable service to our community, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more public comment, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.